God's got something He wants to share with us, and He wants to help us with something in life. And so if Cindy and Carol want to make their way up, and we really do appreciate y'all participating in this, and it's going to be great. So give it up for Carol and Cindy. Amen. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, guys.
Hello. This is the mic. Hi. I'm Cindy, a grateful believer in Jesus, and I struggle with grief. So, we're going to share some stuff with you tonight that I hope is very helpful.
I'm Carol, and by the grace of God, I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I have suffered with just about everything in life that challenges. Actually, I say I was challenged by it, but by the grace of God, I'm overcoming it daily, and some things we've conquered together, and some things we're still working on. So I'm grateful to be here and be able to share some of those experiences with you tonight.
We're going to share a mic. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, so Carol is actually an expert, so she didn't share that, but she has way more knowledge than me. So y'all really listen to what she says, because I'm just walking through it, like sometimes walking, sometimes not even walking, sometimes falling.
Sometimes we just crawl or belly crawl or whatever,
For sure. So one of the first things that we're going to talk about tonight is that there's different kinds of grief. A lot of people know that, but Carol, do you care to just kind of talk about like what kinds of grief you work with in your setting, and then when someone should maybe seek a professional?
Okay. Well, I know that you have them categorized a little bit different. You want to read your categories, and I'll kind of break it down a little bit.
Yeah, so I labeled them as acute grief, manageable grief, and then chronic grief.
Right, okay. And so we're going to be talking about the loss of a loved one, and that can actually come in all three forms. There is the acute form when it initially happens, the loss happens, and then there's, it can be, grieving is, the loss of a loved one is a lifetime process. It's an adjusting to life without something that was very, very important to you and that you were very attached to. There's all kinds of grief. We may grieve lifestyles that we had. We may grieve homes that we had, jobs that we had, things that we anticipated our life looking like, and it didn't happen. And so I could probably go on all night talking about the different kinds and give you examples, but I think we do need to understand, that, there's different stages of it, and different things come in different forms. Situational grief is usually just the, what was the second one? The manageable grief normally is a situational grief, but there's still a level of the grieving process in that. So.
Yeah, for sure. So when do you think someone should seek a professional help?
Whenever you begin to feel like that your grief is affecting your motivation, your daily life, maybe you're feeling intense levels of the intense stages of grief in your life. Maybe you cannot force yourself to get out of bed in the morning because you're so depressed. Maybe you're very angry and you are taking it out on other people in your life. We tend to do that. There's maybe you get stuck in the denial and you don't want to talk about it, and your family wants to talk about it, and you just refuse. Everything's fine. Everything's good. I'm just keep moving on through life and don't acknowledge the grief.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, I think it's so funny. Not funny, it's not funny. Grief is never funny. But for me, I had someone, I don't know, 2 months after Dave passed away, come to me and say, hey, there's this place that you can go, and they're grief counselors, and they can really help you. And I was like, you know what? I actually worked in mental health for 10 years, and I don't really think I need that. And then I was like, man, I think that's denial. I probably need that. And so, there's no shame in seeing a counselor. Those two things Jesus and counseling can coexist together, and you can have both and still grow in the Lord and with a therapist.
That is biblical. It says in a multitude of counselor, there is much wisdom. So.
Yes, yes. Okay, so you talked about stages, that there are stages of grief, and you did talk about some of them, but what are the stages of grief?
Okay, so it's important to know that these stages are not just, oh yeah. Here we go. I'm going to hold it up. Yeah. Okay. That they're not fluid. You don't just like climb a ladder and go through each one of them. These are things that you bounce in and out of. They sometimes don't completely go away. You may find yourself a year down the road facing Christmas time, and you become very angry, or you become very depressed at that time because you've gone back into one of these stages. So it's important to understand that. But normally denial is first, and we will, like she said, we will just try to it's actually a natural defense mechanism for us because we are not psychologically capable of really grasping it at that moment. So if you have a period of denial, don't feel like there's something wrong with you. It is natural for us to do that. Then a lot of times we will bargain. We will begin with God, don't let this be true, please. I remember when my brother died, I kept saying, don't, God, just let him walk in the door. I just knew he was just going to walk in the door, and they had this all wrong. But I kept saying, God, please let him. I will do this if you will just let this not be true. If you're facing someone passing, there's a level of grief you pre-grieve, so to speak. You already start letting go, and a lot of times you'll see a lot of bargaining in that area where you say, God, I will do this or won't do that if you will just not let them die, not let this happen. And God understands that. Then there's anger, and that can go into all kinds of levels. You can just have a lot of irritation and easily irritable to just outright rage. And so definitely it ends in a rage stage. You want to get help. And then there's depression, and it can be as just a mild sadness, depending on how attached you are to someone, to all-out despair. The important thing is we don't get stuck in that stage, and then we can move into acceptance. And again, we can get to where we accept that this person is no longer in our life, but then something trigger, and we have to work back through that. For instance, my brother, when he passed away, whenever his youngest daughter had a child, I grieved again because he should have been there for that, and all the things after that. So you go back into some of those stages and have to work through them. It's important to recognize that. One of the coping skills, while we're here so I don't forget it, I tell a lot of my clients to write it on a calendar, like a month before Christmas. You may start feeling this. And what you need to do at that time so that we can remember to do it, because we just wake up and we just start feeling different and we don't realize it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great advice. I need to do that, actually.
Yeah.
So today we are focusing on grief from loss, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, as Carol said before, it doesn't necessarily have to be death. But a lot of the coping things that we're going to talk about tonight are going to be specifically like for death. Please know this is not the last grief discussion that we'll have at Recovery at the Rock. We do this at least annually usually, and so we have a ton of friends right now that are suffering with loss of a loved one from death. And so we just really thought it would be really good this year to focus on just some coping skills and some things that we can do to help us to be able to walk the life that we have to still walk.
Yes, yes. And so we have a list of some of the things that we know of and that we've even practiced. You could make a card or a letter, and we actually put one together with some of the ways that God has helped us. And we'll share a little bit about the gnome and the ladybug in a little bit. But make a card, let them know that you miss them. God may give you a term such as this. Mine was Save a Place for Me, to tell my brother, and we actually played that Matthew West song in his funeral. And then yours was Save Me a Seat. Is that what it was? So, use those things that encourage you to encourage them. We can have a memory box. You can make your own, out of any kind of like a tissue box, or you can buy something. This one says life is good. And, it's hard to believe that life is good in some of those places, but we do need a reminder. I remember telling God, I was very honest with God, and I was like, I know you're good, but I cannot feel it right now. I can't see it, and I really need you. Matter of fact, I said, you're going to have to show me something, because I've got to have something right now, because my heart was so broken. There's a song playlist. You can make a photo album. You can even make those books now, those Shutterfly books that are really nice, and you can do those for yourself or the other family members. A lot of times doing something else for others in the family can really help you. You can join the community, join a grief group, start, coming to church more often, gathering with people who love and encourage you and support you, because what you are doing is, if you're very attached and depend on this person that you've lost emotionally, you need to find someone else that you can attach to. They're not going to be the same, but you can still have that connection, because you've got to fill that void in your life, and you're not replacing them. You're just exchanging that relationship for a different type of relationship. I can't emotionally be connected to you any longer. And we kind of give ourselves the same advice that we would give our children or somebody else. They would want you to be happy. They would want you to connect. So don't forget to do that.
Yeah.
You want to share some of the others?
Well, I was just going to say, in these are like ideas that we've both used and that Carol uses in therapy. You don't have to run out and do all of this stuff all at once.
Oh, no.
I know for me, it has taken a while. Some things I did do pretty quickly, mainly because my therapist told me to.
Yeah.
But some things, I just now can do those things because, it hurts to do a whole bunch at once. Yes. And I don't want to hurt that bad, I was telling Carol yesterday, some of that stuff, it's been 2 years and 9 months since Dave passed away. And it was just maybe a month ago when I used to do this thing with him where he would go to get in my car and I would act like I was driving off. I would technically drive off, as he was getting in. And he had thought it was a big joke between us, and I hadn't done that. And Carly went to get in the car with me the other day, and I did it to her. And she was like, I'm not Uncle David. And immediately I felt all these feelings, I thought it was funny, but then I felt a little bit sad. But it makes me feel good now that I can do some of that stuff again, and I can feel like me again, I'm coming back a little bit.
Yes, yes. And we have to hold on to that thought that we will find ourselves again. It may be an altered self, but it can be a more sensitive, more loving self if we will let God temper us. Some other things that we can do as time goes by, you can take one of their shirts, and you can make things out of it. You can make a fidget toy, a necklace, a bracelet, a keychain, teddy bears, pillows. You said that y'all put his voice in a teddy bear or something?
Yeah, for my nephew for Christmas. There are these memory bears, and so I had a recording of David laughing. And so I put it in there, and Summit can squeeze the bear, and he can hear his dad laughing.
That's pretty nice.
I also brought some of these, some of the resin things that I made. So these are flowers that were at Dave's funeral, and I just put them in resin, and now I don't know what to do with them. They just stay in a box.
Well, it helped you at the time, and
It
that may be
did.
the thing. We helped them at the time, and who knows, you may share them someday. So, yeah. So we can use, we'll come back to the ladybugs and gnomes, but we can use deep breathing, for those moments, because sometimes those feelings come like waves at the ocean. Sometimes they're huge waves and they'll knock you off balance, and sometimes they're just light waves. But whenever you're like around someone or you're at work and you feel like this isn't the appropriate time, but it hits you, what can you do in those moments? And so you can practice some deep breathing. Recognize when you are starting to build big feelings, and in order to manage your emotions. One thing that you want to share that one, what you started doing there?
Yeah. My therapist recommended that I do like affirmations, basically. Like, I know with Reggie, like when he was in rehab, he had to do gratefuls. And so like every day he would write down like things that he was grateful for. And so my therapist told me that I should do like an affirmation. And so I would do things like every day I would say like, Lord, I'm thankful for David, and I'm thankful for the time that we had together. I know that you're good. I don't know what's good in this yet, but I know that you're going to show me that. Thank you for giving me the time that I had with him. Thank you for showing me that I have a place here, and let me do your work for you until you're ready for me to go where he is. And, when I first started that, I think the first day all I said was, Lord, and I just started crying, and that was all I could do. But the next day, I could say, Lord, I'm thankful for David. And then soon I could do the whole thing. And, now I really don't have to do it anymore. Like, I don't do it as much. But when we have times that, like, the 4th of July was his favorite holiday, and so when fireworks are going off and all I can think about is how he's getting to see them from a different view, which that took a long time too, honestly. But, or when it's storming, because he loved to chase storms. And so when it starts to storm, I immediately think of him, like, what's he doing right now, And so I can bring that back, and I can take a deep breath and say, like, Lord, I'm thankful for the time that I had with David.
And that's good. Try to, it's hard in the moments, but try to think about, the positives, the time that you did have, reframe your mind. And if you can't do it just naturally, I journaled. I think one thing that really, really helped me was every morning I would get up and I would write my prayers as a letter to God. And I would, as time went by, I would write, I can't see anything good. Please help me. I want to still be faithful to you. And then I would read meditation books, and it's so amazing how many times, God just, he knows where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing in every intricate moment of your life. He's aware of. And he showed me that through my grieving process. Because I would sit down and I would be feeling something, and I would write it, and I'd pick up my meditation book, and it would answer that. It would give me like God's what he was wanting to say to me. And I would rewrite that. Thank you, God, for helping me with this today. And journaling and those moments as God lets me heal, because, we learn by seeing, doing, and hearing. And so as I would hear those, I would read it, and I would hear it, and I would write it. It really, drove it deep into my soul and my spirit. We can start a mission. We can simplify our life. Some of us are so busy, we don't really have time to grieve. I remember thinking, I don't have time for this, and I had to take some time off work. Be kind to yourself. Don't rush the process. I'm a counselor. I know all these stages. I found myself thinking, okay, this is what you're feeling, just, and trying to rush it. But we have to go through the motions and the emotions of it in order to heal. So don't deny them. Be kind. Let's see. And then again, like I said early, prepare ahead for questions, for hard moments when those feelings flood you. And one thing I find really important, if we have to busy, our life forces us to get back to work really quick, take time. Give yourself 10 minutes in the morning or in the evening to sit down and to think about that person. And give yourself time to grieve. That doesn't mean those other feelings won't come at different times, but you are acknowledging and being respectful to yourself and to the process of healing by doing that. So, schedule 10, 15 minutes in your day to sit down and just talk to God and cry if you need to cry.
I think that's great advice. I know for me, I was probably very, very guilty of trying to avoid all that. And so making myself more busy probably and not taking time. I wanted these 5 steps to be a checklist that I could just check. Okay, we're good. Here we go. And that just didn't work out.
Yeah. And it's okay to busy yourself for a while, but whenever it does start affecting you, then it's time to really start looking at what are some of these steps that I know that can help me.
Yeah.
Because we're all bent a little bit different, and we have to do things in our own time and our own pace.
Yeah.
So there's no right way or wrong way to grieve other than to, if you start going down a road that's going to cause more damage, that would be a way that you would want to get off that road and ask God to help you to get back on the higher road with Him. So,
You want to talk about our little confirmations from God?
we can. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
Whatever.
Okay. Well, so mine is, I've had several losses, but the one that I'm talking to you the most about is after 13 and a half years of recovery, I had a brother that for about a year had been going to church with me, and he was trying to get into recovery himself. And so he committed suicide. That was the ruling. There was a little bit of unsurety about that, but I made my mind up that it didn't matter what happened, that God knew. But the day that I got the call, all my life, whenever I was a child, I had a tree house, and it had ladybugs all in it. So as a child, I fell in love with ladybugs. And whenever I got my own house and stuff, there were never ladybugs there. And I didn't understand why I didn't have ladybugs. So my brother had this big garden, and every year I would say, hey, are you going to order stuff for your garden this year? And he would say, yeah. And I said, well, please order me some of those ladybugs. And he never ordered me ladybugs, ever. I never got them from him. But the day that they called and said that he passed away, I was sitting out on my carport, which was like my little quiet place, and these ladybugs started landing all over me. And I was like, what is this? They're everywhere, and it took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together. And the moment that it came to me was after they found his body and we went out to the bridge, I put my hand on the bridge and just kind of sat there, probably in the last place my brother sat, and a ladybug climbed off that bridge onto my arm, and I thought, okay. And for days and days and days after that, ladybugs just came from everywhere, and like I said, we'd never had ladybugs, and after that we just every now and then in special moments I would find one, like we finally all got them back together at Christmas, and all his kids came, and I looked up and there was a ladybug. There was a time that I was just really kind of in my mind wanting God to reassure me that my brother was okay, and I looked out my window, and there's a ladybug on my window. When I bought my new house here in Jonesboro, when I walked in it moving, I thought, that's a huge move for a person, especially a single woman. And whenever I did that, I looked up and there was a ladybug on the ceiling. We had Christmas there. There was a ladybug, and it's just they just show up at those times when I need to know that everything's going to be okay, and that's what I get from that. So that's my story with that, and so.
Mine is gnomes. I really don't even know where the gnomes came from. I decided, David and I used to drive by the little sheep that's down here on 49 that they dress up like for holidays. And we just thought it was the funniest thing. And so I wanted something out at Dave's place, and I wanted to be able to dress it up. And so I was like, I'm going to get a concrete gnome. I talked to Reggie about it, and he was like, why? I'm like, I don't know, but I think that's it. And so we found a gnome. I still haven't found the one that I want, but we found a gnome, and I took it out to Dave's place, his new place, and there was a gnome sitting there already. And I was like, what in the world is happening? It's a little bitty one, and I had gotten a pretty big one. And so I text my mom and my Aunt Diane, and I'm like, do y'all know like where this gnome came from? And they were like, yeah, we took it out there. And I'm like, okay, why? And they were like, well, we don't know. And so I sat there and I Googled it to see like what gnomes meant, because I didn't want it to mean something that it didn't need to mean. And so when I Googled the significance of a gnome, it said that gnomes are known for guarding buried treasure. And so we just stuck with gnomes, and people buy me gnomes all the time. We have gnomes all over our house. We have gnome rugs and gnome kitchen towels and a gnome door hanger and gnomes everywhere. There's gnomes everywhere in my house. Carly did a whole TikTok about it, making fun of me. But they're just everywhere. And it's so funny because I don't remember ever seeing them, but now there are back to school gnomes, and there's Valentine gnomes, and there's St. Patrick's Day gnomes. If you want a gnome, you can find one for sure. So they just show up.
And so to me, that's just so much confirmation that God knows, what's coming up in your life. It's, because, that started 2.5 years ago, and now they're everywhere. So, and also, don't be afraid to share those, I call them touches from God, confirmations, that He is with us and that He wants us to know that our loved ones are okay, or that we're going to be okay in spite of really hard, challenging circumstances. And I shared with my cousin about the ladybug. And a few years later, after that, her mother passed away, and her mother was the one that held their family together. And she was walking out of the hospital and thinking, how am I going to do this? This is going to be on now. And she said, I felt something on my arm in that hospital, and I looked down, there was a ladybug on me. And I borrowed your story that was God saying, everything's going to be okay. He's with me in this. And so don't be afraid to share those things with you, because we do share God's love and encouragement when we do that, and it just keeps passing on. So
yeah, that's awesome. So I did a post a couple of weeks ago and kind of asked like what people would want to see in our grief conversation, and I had somebody post something that I think is just like one of the most important things that we can talk about. And she said, like, as a recovering addict, she's never lost someone and been sober and stayed sober. And so I want to cover that real quick. Like, what advice do you have for someone who is new to sobriety that might grieve the loss of someone?
Okay, so that's really a great question, and it is a fearful thing, and I'm glad that you, whoever asked that, and those other who may be thinking that you understand the power of addiction and falling back. But we need to resolve in our mind right now that that's not an answer for us. If it's one thing that kept me clean for a lot of years, was I just told myself that's not an answer for me. It's only going to destroy my life. And so just resolve right now that you do not have to relapse, that it's not an answer. And then also begin preparing. You can prepare by thinking about, okay, what do I need to do in that situation? And we need a support system. We need structure in our lives. We need to build stability in our lives. We need to stay close to God right now and walk through the experiences that He gives us now that give us spiritual and emotional and relational strength, so that we have that when it comes time. God is not just going to throw you into something. He will, it's not gonna in that moment think, I can do this because I've been through all these things, but you will have preparation enough to help you to continue to grow with what He's giving you in those other experiences that He's brought you through. So stay close to God. Learn how He speaks to you. God speaks to me through nature. And He speaks to me through other people in situations. And so learn that. Spend quality time with Him. Make that a part of your daily life. Tell Him the good, the bad, and the ugly, about things. Be honest with God during those times. I told God, I don't like this. I don't know where you're going with this, and I don't like it. And I know that you're good, and everybody says you're good, and I've seen that, but you're going to have to prove it to me. Be honest with people. I know for me, when my brother passed away, I had not drank or done anything for 13 and a half years, and I wanted to go get drunk. And I think I wanted to get drunk because that was never the big issue for me. It was all of other things before that, and it was just kind of like those filler things, and whenever I got in recovery, I never even really considered it. But I didn't just want to drink. I wanted to get drunk because I was so angry. I was angry at my brother's family. I was angry at him. I was angry at God, and I was angry at myself, and I had to acknowledge that. But I didn't keep that a secret, because the more I kept thinking it and not saying it to somebody, the bigger it grew, the louder it got in my head. And so I went to my husband at that time, and I said, I don't want to scare you, but I'm scared. This is what's going on with me. And he said, well, Carol, that's crazy. And I said, I know it's crazy. I'm not going to do it, but this is what I'm thinking. And when I said that, it's like it freed me from its power just a little bit. And so then I had two other people in my life that I really trusted not to judge me or get scared for me and all that kind of stuff. They just prayed with me and said, Carol, you can do this. I'm here for you. And once I said it out loud and acknowledged that I wasn't going to do it, it's like it went away. And so don't keep that a secret. Be honest with safe, supportive people about where you're at, and stick with them. Stay close to them.
Okay, last question. Is it okay to feel grief and joy at the same time?
Absolutely. We need to feel grief and joy at the same time to be fully experience the human experience, to fully have that. The first time that we laugh or we wake up joyful, we may feel guilty for that. And I've heard a lot of people say that, and I felt a little bit of it myself. But my family handled things with humor, so I think I got past it a little bit quicker than most, because my brother was humorous and he wanted to laugh. But we have to give ourselves the same advice that we would give our child or someone else that we love. We would say, of course, it's okay to be happy again. Of course, it's okay to laugh again, to be joyful. And then think about the loved one that you lost. What would they tell you? They would say, I don't want you to be sad for forever. I want you to be happy. I want you to live your best life. Don't cheat yourself of the life that you've got. Don't waste your time. And grieving is not a waste of time, but staying stuck in that is. We want to work through it, And so please let yourself continue to love that person and honoring that person by being happy, being joyful. And y'all, the joy doesn't come quick. Sometimes it takes a while. But if you look at, there's a book written one time. It's called Choose Joy, and it gives the analogy of a train track, and that life is like a train track. And there's two tracks. One is joy and one is sorrow. And we have to run down both of them, but we can lean more to one side than the other. And so we choose joy, and we just try to lean toward the joyful side. So just don't allow yourself to feel guilty in those moments. You will experience, it will come to your head, but remind yourself that it is okay and that person wants me to love and be happy.
Thank you so much for helping me. That was awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.